soup is one of the best ways to save money on food. In this video, I'm making one of the soups that consistently makes the top 20 best soups in the world list. Today, I'm sharing a recipe that comes from the gorgeous country of Portugal. I'll be making a soup that originated from the Minho province in northern Portugal. But first, can we just talk about how beautiful Portugal is? There's the pristine coastline and the gentle rolling landscape, and it's looking especially beautiful to me now because it's home to my family's new favorite soup. You may have guessed it, I'm talking about caldo verde. This is such a beloved soup that's popular in many parts of the world, including here in the US. Caldo verde translates to green broth in Portuguese, and in the original recipe, the green comes from a green Portuguese cabbage that is also called sea kale. It's a plant that's only found in Europe, but it looks more like the collard greens that we have here. So people in the US frequently use either kale or collard greens in this. Today, I think I'll be using kale. At this point, I do hope it goes without saying that you can sub any sausage in to match your budget or leave it out. But when I'm making a recipe for the first time, if possible, I do like to try to find the original ingredients. I've seen 2 sausages used for this dish, either linguica or chorizo. Linguica has a distinct flavor profile that includes spices, chilies, and lots of garlic. My local market had 2 versions of this. They had a hot linguica or the regular kind for $4.99. And I figured I'd be able to get 2 pots of soup out of this, so that's not really a bad deal at all. I decided to go with a regular because I wasn't sure how hot the spicy one would be. I'll pick up 1 bunch of Italian kale, also known as lacinato kale. Everything else I need, like potatoes, onions, and garlic, I already have in my pantry. So let's head home and make this recipe. Here are the ingredients for this very simple caldo verde recipe. I'm planning to make enough for 3 people, so you can adjust this accordingly, but I have 4 potatoes, 1 clove of garlic, a half of a white onion, the sausage and kale, and then for the broth, you can either use chicken bouillon, or in my case, I'm going to go ahead and use this boxed chicken broth that needs to be used. And this has 4 cups in it. And if you're vegan, you already know what to do to make this soup work for you. I've read lots and lots of variations on this recipe, and sometimes people let the potatoes disintegrate into the soup to make a hearty, thick broth, and sometimes people leave the potatoes in larger chunks. I think I'm going to do a combination of both, so I'll cut a couple of the potatoes quite thin and add those to my pot first, and then I'll make the larger pieces and add those in after my soup's been cooking for a while. I'm adding my potatoes to water so that they don't turn brown, and here are the larger chunks that I want to be solid in the soup. I was thinking that this soup would be good for my viewers eating lower carbs. You could always do half potatoes, half cauliflower, or half chayote squash, half cauliflower. I feel like the chayote squash is a great stand-in for potatoes. I was reading that traditionally there's not a lot of this sausage in the soup. In fact, I've read about traditions where there was only 1 piece used as a garnish. Can you imagine how delicious that 1 piece would seem if you only had 1 to eat? I'll plan on about 5 or 6 pieces per bowl, but still that's not a big spend on the meat for this meal, maybe a couple bucks. For the aromatics in this dish, we're using 1 clove of garlic and half of a chopped onion. Lots of recipes called for a whole onion, but again, I'm making a smaller portion size of this for my family. Which I'll tell you right now was a huge mistake. My family loved this soup so much that my son said he could have easily eaten 5 bowls of this. I mean, I don't know if he literally could have eaten 5 bowls, but he thought he could. So if you have at least a few people, I would either double or triple this recipe. I want these to brown slightly on at least one side. The sausage added a lot of flavor to this pan, so we'll use it to fry our onions and garlic in. If you need to cut costs, you can always substitute onion and garlic powder here. Now I'll add in half of the potatoes, which are the thin sliced potatoes, along with the chicken broth. For the kale, I'll remove the fibrous stalks and save those for a vegetable soup. Once I've deveined all the kale, I'll roll it up together in a bunch and slice it in small chiffonades, which are basically just strips. Now that my potatoes are soft and starting to fall apart, I'll add in the rest of my potatoes. These are the ones I've cut into bite-sized pieces. Obviously, if you want to use two types of potatoes, like yellow Yukon Gold potatoes and russet, then it's going to have the same effect because those types of potatoes tend to hold their shape more than russet potatoes, and I think red potatoes also would work. I let this simmer for a few minutes before adding in the kale. I'm kind of curious about this though, because most recipes have you adding the kale in towards the end, but it seems like you want the kale to break down in the soup, so I think next time I might add this in a little sooner so that it can break down into the soup and have it color the soup more of a green color. I would love to hear from my Portuguese viewers on this. I'm adding some of the sausages to the pan and I'll hold some out for plating also. I let this simmer for another 15 minutes or so and then tasted it to make sure that the flavors were fully developed, and it was so good. My family loved this soup so much that I was wishing I'd made a bigger pot. In fact, it was so popular that I found myself trying to add some more liquid to this to maybe try to thin it out a little bit to get some more soup, but you really don't want to do that because it does take away from that richness of the broth. And by having half of the potatoes disintegrated into the soup, it makes it much richer and a heartier broth. The Portuguese linguiça sausage was kind of dry with notes of garlic in it, but it wasn't very spicy. So I think next time I might try the hot linguiça. I really think you could probably substitute any sausage here, like andouille or maybe even a kielbasa. Lots of sausages have garlic and paprika in them, and if they do, I think they would work in this soup. This caldo verde is such a simple recipe with only a few ingredients. I hope you'll give this a try because it's super inexpensive to make and it's my family's new favorite soup recipe. That's it, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I do hope you like this video. I'll see you Sunday, if not sooner, on my other channel.
Morning has broken, my windows are open. Wanna feel the wind blow through my hair. Which way do I follow? What happens tomorrow? I turn to you and hope you can guide the way. Sometimes